Good morning. Howdy.
How's it going?
I'm excited for our coffee conversation.
Right?
So
Yeah. I'm going European style.
that's cool. I'm going instant coffee style. So,
Already you're at the instant coffee?
yep, already. So I guess like the biggest news this week was the Olympics.
It was coming. I wasn't too surprised that was happening. I think there were so many people that started speaking up against it, and a few countries that had said they would not participate.
Yeah, exactly. I was just looking at some articles from like 2 or 3 days ago, like on the 23rd, 24th, and it was kind of questioning why they hadn't done anything yet. And I think Michael Phelps even came out and said something like, I'm surprised it took this long for them to cancel."
It was obviously still far out. There was only like 50% of the athletes that were already qualified. So a lot of tournament had been canceled. So the problem came to, when do you qualify for the events, how to run these safely, how to run them early enough that people can then prepare for the Olympics. I mean, this was logistically was not really possible with the athletes in a fair way with the preparation required, and obviously that wasn't the case.
You have all these athletes that have kind of been on this timeline and on this plan to compete this summer. With it being pushed back a year, do you think this will cause, I don't know, like 10-20% of athletes to maybe have to drop out because they're on a different plan now or for whatever reason?
I mean, I think there's different reaction from the athletes. You get those that are really excited because they get 1 year more, which means more training, more chance to perform better, maybe more chances to actually qualify. And then you get those that have been like working so hard, and they're really down. And then you have the end of career athlete. Like, what if their body cannot make it for another year? That's a tough one. Like if you've already been pushing for this and you have to push for another year, it just, you just have to like reset, reprogram everything.
Yeah. I was thinking that, like you said, taking time off might have to be a necessity because essentially you're adding a complete another year to your prep and to your ramp up. And obviously they do a ton of testing at all these Olympic centers, and they kind of know exactly what it takes to compete at the highest level at this specific time. And now you push that forward a year, it just makes sense that they would have to take some time off and kind of reset almost their training.
Yeah. And typically I think the Olympic athletes take time off sort of at the end of the summer. Most of them have their international season, in June, July, August, sometime even September. So this is an interesting time too, because they will probably take time off now, which means the season, I mean, it's just changing their whole season. But, I think the good part about it is at least they have an answer. It's probably way better to know what's going on than just to be training in the dark at home, trying to like do whatever you can remotely with your coach and your team.
Oh my God. Yeah.
So I think that was the best thing that could happen.
I mean, not only for like the athletes, but, I was reading an article this morning about like the layoffs just in the sports industry in general. And this was talking specifically about, I guess, the hourly workers at all of the stadiums for all of these teams, right? NHL, NBA, Major League Baseball.
Yeah.
But I started thinking like you're also going to have the companies that run the gambling sites, the companies that do the tickets and do the events.
Industry, absolutely, right? The whole industry is affected by what's going on.
What do you think is going to be the biggest like change to come out of this? Because it almost seems like some of these industries are going to have to change as a result of everything that's going on, whether because of financial reasons or because, our society is going to change in the way that we attend these games and go to these events. Have you thought about that at all? Like, what do you think is going to be the biggest change we see?
Well, what I've been talking about stadiums for quite some time now, and I think like this is a perfect example. Like I kept asking, why are we building stadiums? Why are we spending so much money in sports real estate? You know, like with everything that's happening in the world now, obviously with COVID, but also like the security risk and all other elements. Like it seems that we spend so much money into building facilities for sport with a lot of spectators, where I think the future of sport is you're going to be watching it from home on your couch with a VR, you know, pair of goggles, right? So you'll have a better experience. You'll be on the field with the players, and you won't have to travel anywhere. I mean, I think that's what the future of sport is, and I think this is just precipitating that. And there's been a lot of conversation around like, well, I don't want to play if there's no fans in the stands, or you know, I play better if I have the audience. Social media, and you have way more personal conversation between the fans and the athletes than we had before. So I think what's going on is just like forcing that.
I mean, this has been kind of building, I think, for a couple of years, just in terms of like the quality of television. Like I think back to what TV used to look like, you know, pre-HD, and how different it is now. And now you have 4K, and it's kind of almost like these unreal viewing experiences that you can have from home. And so it almost like begs the question, like, is it even worth paying these like really ridiculous ticket prices to go to the event when you can really spend a lot of that money on having a really high quality system in your house and you never have to go anywhere?
Mm-hmm.
And not saying that you have to stay in your house, you know, 100% after all of this is over, but I do think that has a huge effect on, you know, the kind of the viewership. I think the NBA and I think a lot of the sports leagues have been dealing with this for a couple of years now.
Yeah. And you know, obviously the esport is leading the way in doing things differently. And I think that, again, this is showing what they're doing is could be an inspiration for general sports. I think a lot of things are going to be different after this. And people are going to start thinking about alternative ways to do sporting events, for sure.
Yeah. Interesting about esports, you know, you have these stadiums that are built, and they're not huge stadiums that are specifically geared towards esports. So they might be 200, 250, maybe 500 people in the audience. Yep. So it's a lot smaller crowd. Their big audience is online, on Twitch, on the online platforms. And then they have their championships that are held in, you know, they held it in Barclays Center a couple of years ago. I think this past year they had it at Philadelphia in the Wells Fargo Center. So I think that there is kind of like the ability to have smaller gatherings for the regular season. And then when you do have your championship games or your kind of final games, you can have those in bigger stadiums down the road. But maybe that's a model that esports has really kind of utilized the last couple of years that might be heading that way for a lot of the professional sports.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think athletes should be doing? We have a whole bunch of athletes right now that either are they're going to retire, or they just graduated, or they're on hold for next year. What do you think they should be doing right now when they're home?
I think that they should, number one, be on a schedule. I think that's really important to kind of keep that routine. But I think that for athletes that are currently competing, I think maybe taking some of this time, starting to think about what life could potentially look like after their sport, after they retire, because this is essentially it, right? You have nothing to do. Maybe they do like a home workout right now, but this is kind of what it's going to be like right now when you retire. And, you know, just like everybody, it's kind of going a little stir crazy. And so I think this is a great time to do some reflection, really start thinking about specifically what it is that you want to do. And then on top of that, I think this is an amazing time to be reaching out to people and to be networking.
Yeah.
I'm really big on like the power of coffee and going and meeting people for coffee. I think that's incredibly powerful. But I think in substitute of that right now, especially, you could honestly do 3-4 coffees in a day, just like we're doing now. And you could meet with people from
Honestly, drinking
1
3-4
hour.
coffees a day, but
But I think, like, right now a lot of people are captive in their homes. And so
yeah.
I think that kind of taking advantage of that, reaching out, especially for those that are still competing, you have definitely a story that people want to hear, and using this
And I
time
think
to
people are sympathetic to that right now because they know that,
totally.
You can't do what you're supposed to do, and I'm sure they'll listen to what you have to say. I really like what you said around the fact that this could be sort of an example of how retiring feels like, and maybe this is not great for a lot of current athletes to like stop feeling that, but I think if you really struggle with this experience, this is a good example of why you need to start preparing now, and have
Right.
some sort of plan in place.
Right now, you probably have no income, you have no job, you have nowhere to be. And that's very much what it's going to be like the day after retirement. And so it's a great time to think, and also leveraging your athlete status, reaching out to these people. Like you said, they're going to be empathetic to what is happening right now in our country as a whole, and specifically with sports, and really kind of leveraging your status as a current athlete to get introductions and meet these people, do Zoom calls and do Zoom coffees, and really find out about what they do, if that's an area of interest to you.
Yeah, I think one thing too that I've heard is that talking about what they're feeling right now, because it sort of seemed like a minor concern compared to some people that might be sick or that might be working on the front line. So you feel a little weird about talking about your problem as a professional athlete or a collegiate athlete, but I think you don't want to suppress those feelings because it's gonna come back.
Yeah, I agree.
And I was thinking too, this is kind of like an off season, right? So, posing and taking some time off for sure, but great opportunity to do some rehab work, work on some specific skills or fitness, maybe not straight away, but in a few weeks time, right? Getting started on things that you may not have time to work on for your sport. And then definitely growing outside of sport, like it's perfect time to start new stuff. Learn,
Totally.
right? Or start to meditate. I mean, there's so much things that can be done.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say, and that I was thinking about. Like, have you always wanted to learn another language, or learn to play piano,
Yeah.
or read more, or invest a little bit more in yourself? And I think for athletes, they're so singularly focused most of the time, and so goal oriented, that it's hard to really focus on anything else other than your competition. And now is kind of a time where you do have, for sure, a couple of hours each day where you can spend that time, whether it's reading or picking up an instrument or something like that, as opposed to just spending all your time on Twitter or playing video games. Like, doing something that will really kind of enrich your life, and who knows, maybe find a new passion during this downtime.
Yeah. And I think, you can easily fall into the trap of being on social media and watching videos all day, and keeping the daily structure, like you mentioned, regular meals, regular sleep, regular exercise, splitting it into blocks during the day, and then have social connection as well. Like, I think just having a daily schedule with things planned at separate times, just to keep your sanity and health in check, and not be like falling into the trap of like, binge watching all day, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Which is it's that can be done every once in a while, but as people are seeing right now, as we're kind of doing, here in LA, where Garcetti came out yesterday and said this could be potentially a 2-month lockdown. You can only do so many, episodes of kind of the new show on Netflix. So kind of like, what else are you going to do to your time? And especially for athletes that are so used to being active, it does kind of present a challenge where is that even really that enjoyable to sit on the couch for 4 hours? At times, of course, but just as a whole, this is a great time to kind of dig into some endeavors and, like you said, keep a schedule, keep active.
I think, I know you're big on networking and reaching out to people, and I think definitely doing it with a professional goal in mind. But I think reaching out to other athletes from different sport is also a good one. And everybody is sitting at home, and you can really learn from other athletes. So I think that would be an interesting time to do that too, and grow your network and gain some perspective, and maybe do some workout with other sports, just to learn different things. What can you learn as a swimmer from a football player, or as a football player from, a different sport that has maybe more flexibility or more core. I mean, I think that would be really beneficial.
Yeah, I love that you said that. Like, when I look back at my coaching career, one of my, I guess, regrets, so to speak, is that I was at these great places and I never fully took advantage of the resources that were.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so, like, not only do you have resources on college campuses specifically around business schools and different types of experts and possibly authors in certain disciplines that are on your campus, but also, like, just me specifically, I was at SMU, and while I was there, we had like the #1 men's soccer team in the nation. Like, I would love to go back in time and try and get a coffee or just sit in that coach's office for 20-30 minutes and just learn about him and learn about, how he's built that team to be competing at the highest level. When I was at UCLA, the women's gymnastics team had for like 20 years been in the top 2 or 3 programs in America. Like, I should have been, cultivating those relationships and learning about how they did things. And yeah, maybe not everything translates specifically into football coaching, but I think that there are a lot of elements that you see across all teams, whether it's like businesses or gymnastics teams or football teams, that there are common denominators in the way that all those teams operate, in the way that they work together. So yes, 100%. Like, if
right.
you have,
and it's not just the physical, you can talk about their mental game, how they prepare.
yes.
Visualization, how they use meditation. There's so much to talk about between athletes, and it's totally underutilized.
I guess, like, as we leave, Myriam, let's talk about our #1 work from home tip. Like, what is your #1 piece of advice for people that are maybe working from home for the first time?
Ooh, for the first time. I think it really depends on the situation of each person. For me particularly, my kid is at home, so I'm trying to do something really being focused for 30 minutes, an hour, and then I take a break and do something with my kid. Otherwise she goes crazy. She can't be doing school 6 hours a day without any interaction with us or with a break. So every hour or so we take a little break and we play a game or do something together, and then she goes back and focus on what she has to do, and I do the same. And that, so far, for the last few days, seems to be working quite well. It's hard as the day goes on, and I think also what helps me is exercise in the morning first thing before I even start the day. Just so I know I've done that and I've got it under control.
With you there 100%.
What about you?
I would say, honestly, just waking up and getting dressed like you're actually going into the office. I think it just sets the right frame of mind that that you're there to get stuff done. I personally have trouble sitting in my sweats and hoodie all day and feeling like I'm actually getting something accomplished. So I think kind of, like you said, getting your workout in, doing your normal morning routine, but instead of just going and sitting on the couch or just sitting at your desk in your in your pajamas, like actually like showering, getting dressed, and really preparing yourself to dominate that day. That's the thing that I kind of noticed when I first started working from home about 2 years ago. That made a huge shift in the way I felt about myself.
And it's the small things, but they're important. I mean, and we always go back to sport. It's the same in sport. If you can control those little things, then the day will go much better.
Well, good stuff. I'm at the end of my coffee, so I'm going to go get a refill.
Perfect.
But this was great, Myriam, and we'll do it again next week.
Sure. Next week, I'll be here at home.
Perfect. Oh, me too. Okay, ciao.